want to try this.
Welcome back, my beautiful people, to STR News Digest, your source for what's happening in the world of short-term rentals, travel, and the business of hospitality. Today, I got a very interesting lineup because there's some new developments into what's the crackdown in Europe that I talked about last week. A massive FIFA partnership that we should all be interested in if we're in the short-term rental game. We're also going to be talking about some political moves that Airbnb is making in New York City, and a surprising new revenue source that I found extremely interesting that Marriott is doing that you should be really looking into it or paying attention to what they're doing to help you generate some more revenue for your short-term rental business. And then lastly, we're going to talk about JetBlue and United and how they're shaking up the loyalty program. So let's dive right in. And before I get into all this, as always, I need a big favor. If you're watching live, please, and you have any questions, please list them in the comments. Lorena will pass them on to me, and I'll try to answer them during this live stream. Also, I need a big favor, whether you're watching live or watching this on replay, I need you guys to comment. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, follow me on Instagram, as I always say. But more importantly, comment. I need you guys to comment either on my Instagram, on my Facebook, or on the YouTube channel if you're watching me on YouTube. For some reason, I get a lot of people watching, but no one ever comments. So I'm not getting help by the algorithms for any of the social media, or more specifically on YouTube, because there isn't any engagement. So I need people to just say hi if you want to say hi. But nonetheless, put something on there. It could be nasty. You know, if you don't like the content, if you don't like how I look, if you don't like how I sound, comment below. I just want to hear from you people. All right. Again, those that are watching live, thank you for watching live. I see that there's a couple of you on there. And I'm going to try to monitor some of the comments. But anything that pops out, Lorena, let me know, and we'll touch base. Now, the first thing I want to talk about, if you watched last week, I talked about how in Spain, the government of Spain forced and mandated that Airbnb remove 65,000 listings from its books, right? But here's the big kicker with that. Even with all the hate that is happening in Spain as it relates to short-term rentals and tourism, I've talked about this before. I just recently came from Europe, and I saw a lot of what I'm about to mention right now is that because of all the negative press that's been going on in the media in Europe as it relates to tourists, there's been a lot of pushback with local residents against tourism in general, which blows my mind because most of these countries, you know, the restaurants, the bars, the retail shops are surviving and thriving because of tourism. So I'm not really following, I'm not really understanding why there's such pushback against tourism in a lot of these places. But I'm going to talk about what's happening there. But here's the kicker, and I'm going to give you some specific numbers. STR performances, so short-term rental performances in Europe is actually up by 10%. Now, this is according to a Skift research. They're showing that the demand for short-term rental is still steadily increasing. Now, supply, again, 65,000 listings have been purged from Airbnb. And as I mentioned in the last STR News, that Verbal and Booking.com are also being pushed to also do the same. And they're also eliminating this. This is before this pushback against short-term rentals. Airbnb started by eliminating low performance properties. Booking, as I mentioned in the last STR News, I just came back from the Click event in Miami where I was a guest speaker. They talked about how they are eliminating a lot of non-performing properties, which again, I applaud them for their efforts. We want to get rid of all the bad apples, but I'm also a little cautious because again, they're using these algorithms and they're using AI to determine whether or not you should be on their platforms or not. And granted, they're a business, right? And we are a guest. And if we're advertising on their platform, we are a guest of theirs. We have to abide by their rules. Like it or not, that's the game. This is why I've been preaching for a long time that you should focus on marketing and marketing your property on your platform and getting more direct booking so you're not dependent and relying on these OTAs. But getting back on track, the crackdown in Europe is definitely real, but the demand is stronger than ever. And there's a big statistics or in this study, there's something also that came about. And I'm going to talk about it later on in this live stream. But what you need to understand is that in places like Barcelona, in places like Rome, in places like Paris, the majority of tourists are not spending their nights in STRs. They're spending their nights in hotels. So if you're going to blame anyone, you have to blame the hotel industry. And I'm going to give you some numbers on that. And real quick, because I made a note here, if you look at, for example, going back to Spain, you look at Ibiza, supply dropped, but that supply, even though 65,000 listings were taken off the platform, there was only a slight dip, a dip of only 2.5% of available listings. Why? Because more listings are coming on board and more listings are compliant and they're being allowed to advertise. So the key here is to be compliant, be professional, so you don't have issues. Now, I got a lot of these. Most of this news is going to be related to Airbnb because they're making some big moves in 2025. And the big one that they're doing, and they just announced a global sponsorship deal with FIFA ahead of the 2026 World Cup. This is a massive brand move for Airbnb. Now, again, as I mentioned before, I have a love-hate relationship with them, right? I hate a lot of the stuff that they do, but they are, as a business, they're doing what's necessary. And marketing is one of those big components. I've been preaching marketing for a long time. If you are a business owner, I don't care if you're a short-term rental business owner or not, but if you own a business, you run a business, marketing has to be on top of your priority. This is one of the reasons why Lorena and I wrote and created our ebook. I've been talking about our ebook for a while. You can purchase that ebook now. Now it's back to regular price. So it's not on pre-sale anymore, but you can go to our link below or go to my social media and click on the link and buy that ebook. That ebook is a wealth of knowledge, mainly for short-term rental operators. But if you're running a business, you can, a lot of the strategies that we talk about in that ebook, it is transferable to any business. So regardless of what business you're in, you can get something out of this ebook. Again, go to the link below, or if you're listening to me on social media, find that link, take a look at that ebook, purchase that ebook, and if you purchase that ebook and you have questions, you're going to have an open door to me. I'll be able to answer as much questions as I possibly can. And more importantly, depending on the question, I'll use it for subject matter videos that I'll be doing in the future. Anyway, so big move by Airbnb on FIFA. Now remember, it's a global opportunity for hosts, especially if you are a host in my area, right? Miami, if you're a host in LA, if you're a host in New York City, where a lot of these games are going to be played. Also if you're a host in Mexico, because part of Mexico and Canada are going to share the World Cup in 2026. But if you are a host in an area where a game is being played, take advantage of Airbnb's marketing, right? Tag yourself in there, take their marketing and promote it, because it's definitely going to help your business. Also, make sure that you are prepping your properties, your calendar, your marketing, and your pricing strategies for 2026. Do not wait. Do that now. Now, let's get into some politics somewhat. I've been preaching this for a while. If you're a short-term rental operator, and let me just backtrack, because even though I'm specifically talking to short-term rental operators, it doesn't matter what business you're in. You should take an active role in your local government, because believe it or not, they have a lot of power of whether or not you can operate as a business. They set policies. They have the code enforcement policies that are related to businesses are set by local governments. I learned that a while ago. So I take an active role in my local community, especially my local government. I go to not all, but either myself or a representative of my business will participate in every hearing. When there's a proposal up, I want to read that proposal. I want to take part of it. But here's what Airbnb is doing. They are taking a very proactive move in this, and their first major city in which they're doing it is in New York City. They're spending $5 million into this upcoming mayor's race. Mayor and their commissioners. I don't know if they're called aldermen there, but the commission, right? The city commission, they also play a big role of whether or not something gets passed and becomes some kind of regulation or some kind of new government rule in New York City. So what is Airbnb doing? They're hitting the political world head on, right? They're spending $5 million into this race, not necessarily backing a specific party, but they're backing individuals that they believe are going to be friendly to Airbnb, right? And if you are a short-term rental operator, I highly recommend you get involved. Talk to these politicians. Ask them where their stand is on short-term rentals. Because again, it's in New York City. They were the first city to be very, very restrictive on short-term rentals, because they believed it was one of the reasons why the affordable housing issue was there and over tourism. But the data it's proven that STRs played a very, very, very small or had a very small role in any problems related to tourism or the affordable housing issue that New York City and many other cities are currently confronting. In fact, with the heavy restrictions, the issue didn't get better. It actually got worse. And who benefited? The hotel industry, because it's more expensive today to rent a hotel room in any major hotel than it was prior to this legislation. So it didn't help the situation. In fact, it made it worse. And and I'm going to get really political here. I'll compare it to a certain extent to many of the laws that are placed. Like, for example, gun-free zones are about the dumbest regulation I've ever heard, ever, right? Most of the major issues that happen in gun-free zones. Why? Because the only people that abide by these rules and regulations are honest, law-abiding people. Criminals don't abide by these stupid-ass laws. Anyway, that's just many. That's some of the many issues that I have with government in general. If you've been following me, you know I am not a fan of many regulations. I'm not a fan of any government entity because lately everything has been an overreach, and things are not better today. If you go back to even 15 years ago, you go back 15, 20, 30 years ago, we had half the amount of laws, half the amount of regulation, and yet we were safer, we were more prosperous, we had less issues than we currently do today. So anyway, let me move on. Let's talk about Marriott. So this one was very interesting. This one should interest you if you are a business owner, but specifically if you're a short-term rental operator. One of the fascinating things that Airbnb launched is an in-house ad network. And what it is that they're advertising or selling advertising space in-house on their mobile app and on the TVs in their rooms. Why they didn't do this a long time ago, I have no idea, because a lot of people have done this, but now Marriott is doing it. But here is where you can apply this to your short-term rental, right? If you're not already using QR codes or digital guidebooks like we are to upsell your guests, you're missing out, because this is an opportunity for you to do the same. One of the things that I recommend, and I've talked about this before, is that you partner up with local businesses, your coffee shops, your restaurants, your bike shops, like bike rentals. Partner up with them. You can either sell them advertising space on your smart TV, on your property, on your digital guidebooks for your guests, or you can create some kind of system, like we create a QR code that if a guest books a table at a restaurant or rents a boat, because we have a partnership with a boat rental, rents a boat, you get a commission for that rental. So start thinking outside of the box. Start looking how you can monetize every single guest, because a guest is your customer, and customer acquisition is expensive. So once you have a customer, treat them right, give them first-class service, and offer them other things that they're going to spend money on when they're on vacation anyway. Back in the day, Uber used to give us discount codes, right, that we could pass on to new users, and then we would get a commission for that. They since done away with that program, but I can tell you, when we participated in that program, the money was substantial. It wasn't something small. It was a substantial amount of money that we made. In addition to that, our partnership with our local businesses, the money is substantial, people. In fact, we were looking at the numbers. Our upsales and our waiver program that we have the revenue that's generated from that exceeds the revenue from our daily rental rates. So it's pretty big. You should definitely take a look at that.
Here in Instagram, there is a question. They say, after establishing this partnership, how do we let the client know so they can use, they can start using the services for the product?
Okay, the main way we do it is through our digital guidebook, but you can do it either through a digital guidebook. You can do it. Can you find me the guest book? You can either do it through a digital guidebook, or you can do it if you're old-fashioned and still have a guest book. Here in Fort Lauderdale, we're required to have this. we update it, but you can include it in here. And again, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat as it relates to your partnership with these businesses. But the idea is, or the important thing here is that you need to find a way to track it. And the way we track it is through QR codes via our digital guidebook. So if let's say, for example, you come to Fort Lauderdale and you want to go to Louis Bassi, which is one of the many popular restaurants on Las Olas. If you book a table through us, they're going to know that came from us, and then we will get that commission. So again, here's a sales pitch also for Hostfully. Hostfully is our PMS system. If you click on the link below, we are affiliated with Hostfully. So if you click on it, it'll help the channel because we do get a small commission for anybody that joins Hostfully. But Hostfully also has the digital guidebook that I'm talking about. In that digital guidebook, that's where you can do all your upsells, right? For example, one of the biggest upsells for us is our car seats for cars, our strollers, anything related to babies. They're big, huge sales, and our bike rentals and restaurant reservations. So they go through our digital guidebook. If they book anything there, we will get a commission from that. So that's how you can implement it. But figure out what works for you in your area, and then double down on that marketing. Because again, once you have a customer, you want to, and it's not that you're nickel and diming your customers. They're going to spend that money anyways. So I'll go back to the story with Uber. People were using Uber and not renting cars. So we were encouraging, back in the early days of Uber, people signing up to Uber. And when they used Uber for the first time, we got a commission for that. We got a commission for them signing up to Uber, and we got a commission for them using our code when they actually booked their first ride. Again, that program is no longer available today. Just about everybody on the planet uses Uber, but early on they didn't, and that's one of the ways that Uber grew. So figure out, team up with somebody, some local business in your area, pitch them your idea that you're going to, and I highly encourage you to always bring stats, bring numbers, right? When I first started, I showed them how many visitors, how booked our properties were, and we offered them the ability. That gave us leverage to negotiate our commissions with them, and keep track of where they're going. It's a great way to earn some extra money. And like I said, today, these upsales exceed our revenue from our short-term rentals, from the daily rates from our rentals. But great question. Now, let's talk about JetBlue and United Airlines. Here's what JetBlue and United Airlines has done, and they just recently announced this. If you are a United and JetBlue loyalty program member, now you can combine them, right? It's called Blue Sky, and travelers will have the ability to earn and redeem their points across both airlines. So if you fly on United, you're going to get, you'll get your points on United. Same thing with your points on JetBlue, but you can combine them. And let's say you have, 100,000 JetBlue points. Those points can now apply to United and vice versa. I think this is huge, especially for a person like myself who travels a lot. I don't use United that much because I was not a member of United, but now I will use United on routes that JetBlue doesn't travel on. For example, a lot of overseas flights, JetBlue doesn't currently travel to, but United does. And I often use my points to fly business class. So now I'm going to have the ability to expand that, or my choices have expanded as a result of this move. So I think it's a great move. And as you guys already know, especially if you follow this channel, JetBlue financially, they have been struggling. They were looking for buyers. In fact, what's kind of strange, they were looking to buy Spirit at one point. That didn't take on. They were looking to team up with American Airlines. For some reason, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. They've been struggling with that, but they finally got a deal done with United. And I think this is a good deal, not just for United and JetBlue, but for you as the consumer, because again, now you're going to have more choices and you're going to have the ability to use your points, not just on JetBlue or not just on United, but you can use them on either or. All right, my beautiful people, that is going to be it for today. Let me just check my notes. This one, I didn't want this one to be super long because I have a very, very busy week. Let me just go over these notes real quick, make sure I covered everything. Oh, I forgot to mention this. Okay. And I kind of talked about it before on the study with New York City and how over tourism. So there's a new study that came out, and I'm going to read the article. It came out on June 16th, and it was from, what's the source here real quick? The source it's out of Europe, and it is, they're mentioning Skift, but I know they're not. This writer is not from Skift. They're from some newspaper out of Europe. But anyways, here's what the data says. Airbnb, as I mentioned before, Airbnb is challenging the assumption about short-term rentals and over-tourism, suggesting that that traditional hotels remain the dominant force behind the growing tourism volume across Europe. We talked about that before. But here's some interesting numbers that came out of here. In the EU, right? Over-tourism in the EU, nearly 80%, and I mentioned this in the beginning of this podcast, 80% of guests' night stays occurred in a hotel and not a short-term rental. So to say the short-term rental is a problem when it's only 20% of the tourists visiting Europe are staying in short-term rental, I don't see it. The numbers aren't there. Hotels are 80% of the stays. Then if you're going to point fingers, you have to point fingers at the hotel industry because that's where everybody's staying when they're going on vacation. Anyways, I thought that was an interesting article. It's actually a really long article. They did data from back in 2023. They talked about 2024 Olympics and the partnership with the Vatican, and now in 2025, and how during here's how they're getting some of their stats, right? I'm going to give you, for example, Colombia and some of the places in Europe. If you go to Colombia, you have to fill out the immigration form. And in that immigration form, you have to put in an address of where you're staying. So smart on this reporter to go to those specific data points to see what addresses and what are people putting down when they're staying, visiting other countries. And those numbers came out to be over 80% of tourists are staying in hotels and not short-term rentals. Anyway, I'm going to conclude there because I keep beating the same drum just because I get really frustrated with the media in general. Like right now, I've been talking about this before. If you listen to the media, you would think that no one's visiting the U.S. In fact, there's been multiple articles that I read in the last few days that is saying that tourism in the U.S. is taking a deep dive. People are hotels are not being full. Short-term rentals are not being occupied. Numbers don't state that. In fact, I'll give you my numbers. We are up in the month of May, in the month of June, we're up by 14.7% for May and 23.6% in June in terms of revenue and occupancy rate. So people are still coming to Florida. Anyway, love you guys. I'll see you on the next one.
Imagine a vacation where every detail is tailored just for you. That's the Dream Vacations and Rentals by PMI difference. We're not just another rental company. We're your personal vacation curators focused on you, our guest. From hand-picked properties to curated local experiences, we craft personalized journeys. Our marketing reaches you with the perfect options, matching your unique travel style. With Dream Vacations and Rentals by PMI, your perfect getaway is just a click away. Visit our website to book your dream vacation today and experience the PMI difference.